Hi everybody, my name is Chris Blackwell and today I'm going to be covering Mac spoofing. The first slide here just talks a little bit about what the definition of Mac is. Mac is also known as Media Access Control. It's a 48-bit unique address that is burned in at the factory during the manufacture. The Mac is actually burned into the network interface card controller, which is a hardware device on the device. The first 24 bits are assigned to the manufacturer. So these are assigned by the IEEE. For example, FC253F is one of the addresses assigned to Apple. So big manufacturers could have several of the first 24 bits assigned to them, several different groupings, and then the final 24 bits are created by the manufacturer. So on a local network, computers exchange MAC addresses with IP in order to identify where a packet came from, whereas an IP address is randomized normally. The MAC actually is permanent. So if you think of MAC and IP in terms of housing and phone numbers, you're at the same MAC, which would be your street address, at the same house, you could have your house number is the same. It's always going to be whatever's assigned. And then your IP, you could have multiple phone numbers. So if your IP is your phone number, you can change your phone numbers multiple times. It's just that your address is always going to stay the same. So this is just a slide kind of illustrating the start of how Mac spoofing works. On the left we have our victim computer, which is computer A. We have our hacker listening over here with their assigned MAC address, which is different than the MAC address of our victim computer. And then we just have another random computer on the network here. This one also has a different MAC address. So the hacker is using some type of software that allows them to spoof the MAC address. They are now spoofing the address of the original victim, and this one is still just listening there. And basically this severs the connection once the router assigns the new IP address to that particular MAC. That other one will essentially be blocked off the network. So there are some legitimate uses for MAC spoofing. It can be used to create wireless connections to a network. It can be used to change a single computer to a router and then back to a computer on a network again. Also, it can be used if your login is tied and you work at a facility where they have tied your device and your login to a specific device on the network. And you get a new device and you can't log in, you can use MAC spoofing to bypass that temporarily, essentially. There are some questionable uses. Staying anonymous, it depends on why you're trying to be anonymous. It can be used in areas where there are blackouts on media or things like that, or you're trying to whistleblowers and such. It can be used to gain free Wi-Fi access. So I remember reading about a flight or actually seeing this as a use case on a YouTube video where somebody was on a flight where they offered free 10 minutes of Wi-Fi. Well, he basically wrote a script that every 10 minutes would update or change his MAC so that he had free Wi-Fi access the entire flight. And then device tracking. Again, it depends on your reasons. Sometimes they use MAC addresses to track where a device is logged in. So if you kind of are trying to be anonymous and reduce your footprint, that would be another use you could have. And then I call this nefarious uses. I mean, again, it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're pen testing a network, it's not necessarily a nefarious use. But if you're trying to impersonate a legitimate user to gain access to a network, so you are trying to hack a network, hack into a business, and you impersonate a legitimate Mac user, that could be considered a nefarious use. Staying anonymous for illegal purposes, again, if you're trying to load a virus or get across a network and you're trying to move laterally across a network, then that could be kind of a nefarious use. And then keeping your location hidden for legal purposes. Again, if you're trying to release, a virus or a worm into the wild, and you want to keep your location hidden, that would possibly be a nefarious use. So changing the MAC address, the physical hardware, the NIC, can be changed. It is difficult to do. You're not going to see your typical hacker doing that. What a hacker is probably going to do is they're going to use some software that allows them to change and spoof the address. I kind of listed here the major operating systems. Windows has SMAC, Linux has MacChanger, Mac OS has MACspoof, and it can also just be done by the command line. Let's see. The way that it can be detected and protected against, so you could use reverse address resolution protocol. So that would be looking at the ARP table and seeing if an IP, and if there's multiple IPs assigned to a MAC. So if you have one particular MAC and it has 3 IP addresses, it would give you an idea that you probably need to do a little bit more digging and investigation to see why there are 3 different IP addresses assigned to that same MAC address. Sticky ARP is also making sure that a MAC and IP is not overridden. So if in the ARP table, if there is a IP and a MAC address that are assigned to each other, that if somebody comes along and spoofs a MAC address, that the IP does not get overridden for that particular MAC address. So then basically it wouldn't knock that other person off the network. And the last one is kind of along the same lines with MAC IP filtering, basically based on the ARP table. This was the references I used. I used just one paper. It came from a really good paper, really well, it broke it down. So if you guys want to take a look at it, the reference is there. And then I just want to show you real quick how I have a Kali box here running. And essentially, so MacChanger is the program that is used on, or that is preloaded by default here on Kali. So to get into the help menu here, we can kind of see some of the different commands you can use. So we are going to, I will just show you actually real quick, if I do list, that it gives you the first 24 bits of a lot of different manufacturers. So there's quite a few, and on this particular distribution, since I'm running this in a virtual machine, I don't even have to take the network down, so usually you would have to do ifconfig down. Here I'm just gonna change this, and the TAC-R is basically just a randomized MAC, so we're gonna hit that. So you can see here our current MAC is a 52. You can see the permanent MAC, which is based on virtual machine, so that's not my actual one. And then a new MAC is here. So it assigns a new MAC, and it just listed as unknown because it's not one of the known manufacturers in MacChanger. So I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you very much. I appreciate any feedback you can give. Thank you.